Let me introduce our speakers for today, Councilman Harold Byrd Jr. and Dave Hutchison. Our third speaker could not make it because of Department of Transportation business in Tallahassee, but he did provide a statement, and I will be reading that after making the introductions. Harold Byrd is the son of the late Reverend Harold E. Byrd Sr. and former Manatee County School Board member Ruby Byrd. He is a product of Manatee County School District. He received his BA in Business Management from Eckerd College, a Juris Doctor from Florida A&M College of Law, and a Master's of Business Administration from the University of Phoenix. He now serves as Ward 5 Councilman in the city of Bradenton. He also served in that role in 1989 to 1995. He is certified as a redevelopment professional by the Florida Development Association. He served as vice mayor twice, and now is vice chairman for the Bradenton Community Redevelopment Agency. He is a member of many organizations and has lobbied to provide funding for affordable housing for more than 20 years. He is involved with the Florida Black Caucus of local elected officials. He served on the board of directors of many organizations, including United Way of Manatee County, Big Brothers and Big Sisters, and Manatee Council. He serves as executive director of the Harold E. Byrd Sr. Educational Foundation. He has been awarded for many of his accomplishments by organizations such as Atlantic Regional Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, March of Dimes, City of Sarasota, Manatee Opportunity Council, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity, and the National Forum for Black Public Administrators. With his latest educational attainment, Harold would like to utilize his many years of government experience to teach public policy and law at the college level. David L. Hutchison is the executive director of the Sarasota Manatee Metropolitan Planning Organization, better known as the MPO. He serves as his multidisciplinary generalist transportation specialist background spans more than 30 years and combines planning, policy, and public affairs. Before joining the MPO staff in 2011, he served as director of planning for the Southwest Florida Regional Planning Council and worked for the Florida Department of Transportation as a senior policy analyst in the Office of Public Policy Planning in Tallahassee and as intergovernment liaison in FDOT's District 1 Southwest Area Office. Before that, he worked as Director of Account Services and Public Relations for Tweed Advertising in Fort Myers, handling accounts related to tourism, economic development, planning, and engineering. Before moving to Florida in 2000, he served as county administrator for Grand County in Moab, Utah, and before that as administrator assistant road supervisor there. He worked as a legislative aide in the San Diego County Board of Supervisors for 7 years and as national public relations coordinator for the San Diego Convention and Visitors Bureau. Mr. Hutchison approaches regional transportation planning in terms of relationships to land use, community and economic development, environmental issues, safety, security, infrastructure, interdependence, and sustainability, livability. Unfortunately, our third guest could not make it, as I mentioned, Secretary L.K. Nandam, who is the District 1 Florida Department of Transportation Secretary for this district. He has over 22 years' experience in the transportation industry in both the private and public sectors. He has a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from Andhra University, India, and a Master of Science in Transportation Engineering from Wayne State University. Prior to becoming the district secretary, he has served as the Director of Operations and District Traffic Operations Engineer at FDOT. He has previously served as a Traffic Operations Engineer with the City of Boca Raton and as Senior Transportation Engineer with a private sector engineering firm. He is a registered professional engineer in the state of Florida and an active member of the Institute of Transportation Engineers. And now I would like to read his statement that he so kindly provided us. The Central Manatee Network Alternatives Analysis, CMNAA, performed at the request of the Sarasota Manatee Metropolitan Planning Organization, is focused on identifying short-term and long-term improvements that support mobility, safety, economic prosperity, and quality of life goals in the Bradenton and Palmetto area. FDOT has partnered with Bradenton, Palmetto, Manatee County, and the MPO throughout the planning study. CMNNA is a planning level study, and further detailed studies are needed to evaluate long-term improvements. Long-term solutions, like a reliever if needed, for the existing bridges will require independent, individual project development and environmental studies, which will evaluate potential projects based on many criteria, including potential social, economic, natural, and physical effects before moving forward to a design phase. FDOT looks forward to continuing to work with the cities of Bradenton and Palmetto, Manatee County, the MPO, and the entire community as we complete the study and work toward implementing some of the identified alternatives. I am sorry that I was unable to attend today's meeting because of unanticipated scheduling conflicts. And now let us proceed with the program, and our first speaker, Councilman Byrd, please.
Thank you, and good afternoon. First of all, I'd like to say it's indeed a pleasure to be here today to speak to you about such a critical and vital issue that's before our community. I hope not to bore you with such a topic, transportation, traffic, flyover. I told my wife, I say, hopefully when we get through, we won't bore everybody to death and we can come away with a good luncheon. But what I do hope to do is I hope to provide a persuasive argument, a persuasive policy argument that will get all of us together here in the Manatee County community to look at all of the impacts of the flyover, tangible as well as the intangible, the negative effects that such a drastic construction project will take on our urban core. The topic you have is rush hour, but no one is moving. Is a flyover the best solution? I think that the proposed flyover, in my opinion, it should be an effective and an efficient use of public funds, or it should be deleted as an alternative. And it must prove to be a solution to the congestion problems. And this is mostly because of the negative impacts that such a project can have on the character of our city. The Central Manatee Network Analysis Study, they introduced the First Street US 41-301 Tamiami Trail flyover as a possible alternative. And at that time, it featured the local lanes at the ground level with the elevated thoroughway in the median. The main focus today is whether a flyover along US 41 and US 301 corridor will be a viable solution to the congestion problems. This alternative, as I stated, will have a negative impact to the area for the following reasons. We feel that it would shutter existing and new retail businesses. It will eliminate jobs of the area residents who work there. It could close some of the churches that could be affected by right-of-way land acquisition requirements, which currently are unknown to us. To our south, in the city of Bonita Springs, business representatives from Publix, Winn-Dixie, even smaller businesses such as Sunflower Cafe, they voiced opposition to a flyover in their area. Publix official was quoted as saying, the flyovers, they have a negative impact on existing businesses, typically limiting access and restricting movement at intersections. In that community, they came together and they offered different alternatives. They came together, had other different connections on how they could sort of spread the different corridors, the traffic problems, and to alleviate some of the congestion. Flyovers and overpasses are not seen only as business killers, but they tend to destroy the character of a city. I ask you today about the vision we have for Bradenton, Manatee River and the Riverwalk, Riviera Dunes, the Civic Center, Palmetto, Lincoln Park, and the historical Lincoln Tunnel. Perhaps a better subject matter for today would be the question, is it fair for the urban core to bear the unreasonable burden of regional non-destination traffic? And the reason I state that way is that it's been said that 1/3 of the traffic that's coming through, they don't have a destination for Bradenton or Palmetto. One of the main components of good government is competence. Governments must be able to effectively and efficiently provide for its residents. This is especially true at the local level. The full analysis of the project is necessary to validate the reasonableness of the project. And it needs to look at the incentives. These incentives will require the use of public dollars. And these public dollars should be analyzed and deemed an effective public expenditure. By utilizing cost-benefit analysis, it will help to ensure consistent decision-making that will focus on the right issues. This analysis should show that the project is viable and an effective use of these dollars to accomplish the community objective and fairness. This is why it's important that we come together right now as a community and make the right decisions. And these decisions should be made before PD&E dollars are allocated. A project development and environmental study is used to determine the location and the conceptual design of feasible build alternatives for roadway improvements and their social, economic, and environmental effects. Please let me take a little of your time this afternoon to look at the future of our area and fully address some of the questions and the points. First, how high will the elevated highway or flyover be? Are we talking 40, 50 feet? And how long or how far will this roadway continue? Will the flyover represent a realistic vision of a traditional city such as Bradenton or Palmetto? I've had so many calls from people that grew up here that ask a question as to, this is my hometown, a flyover down First Street, is it to that point now? Are there any other alternatives? And that's one of the things we have to look at as a community. Can we look at some of these alternatives and look at all the positive and the negative effects of all of these alternatives and fairly make the right decision? It's important to the future of the area. Will the model solve congestion or attract more regional traffic over a 28-year period? Is the flyover proposed to accommodate motorists who don't have a trip in Bradenton or Palmetto? How much right-of-way is needed, and can this be determined at this early stage? Have all of the bridge alternatives been fully explored? Could talk of mass transit or other transit options help? Could staggered work hours for traffic management help? Have we examined all parallel routes thoroughly? Will the flyover be a toll road? Is this an effective use of public dollars? And last, how will FDOT pay for the project? I'd like to go into some of the, census numbers, but I'm sure all of you are aware. In 1960, which is the approximate time of the DeSoto Bridge, it was put into use. The city of Bradenton had a population of 19,380 people. From the period of 1990 to 2010, the city grew by less than 6,000 people, with a census population in 2010 being 49,546, with current estimates at 54,437. Please note that during this same period of time, the regional growth within the Bradenton, Sarasota, Venice, Florida metropolitan statistical area has been enormous compared to the growth of the cities of Palmetto or Bradenton. During this time, experts have also concluded that widening highways in metropolitan areas in an attempt to speed up motorists, they have not solved congestion problems. This discussion should be about whether the regional traffic should be diverted and other parallel routes be explored instead of increasing the congestion on our streets. Currently, the traffic model shows that the First Street corridor has a traffic volume of 54,000. That volume will increase to 100,000 in 14 years, according to the model, and 150,000 in 28 years. This is with the widening of the street or with the elevated flyover. There are 2 points that need to be made clear. First, we go back to the point of saying 1/3 of this traffic is just regional traffic that's passing through. The second is that the traffic volume increases will not occur without the flyover or the widening of First Street corridor. It's my opinion that this approach is preferring the alternatives that already have the right-of-ways, already have the street networks in place, rather than diverting traffic through other options, such as a third bridge or other parallel thoroughfares. This position uses a solve-in-place attitude that may destroy, devastate places and communities. Urban sprawl, which we know of in this area, it created a lack of parallel routes by developing pasture and farmlands, thus placing a gridlock between communities at certain times. I think when we look at the flyover, we have to make sure that they talk about an improvement. Is this going to be an improvement for our area? Is this something that we as a community can come together and fully support? The alternative should involve some economic development provisions in it as well, by providing the needed amount of traffic on the east and west corridors that are trying to redevelop within the city corridors or urban core. The proposed flyover alternative travels through the heart of 2 of 3 CRAs in the city of Bradenton, and it would be contrary to the CRA plans and the plans of the City of Bradenton Comprehensive Plan. The proposed route also continues through another CRA in the city of Palmetto. This is important because there's an effort to try to have redevelopment within these areas. And I think it would be counterproductive to those redevelopment efforts. Government expects more out of its policymakers, more new ideas, more willingness to question inherited ways of doing things, better use of evidence and research in policymaking, and better focus in policies that would deliver long-term goals. We all want favorable outcomes for the betterment of our urban core. By opening more dialogue and discussion, both the cities of Bradenton and Palmetto, as well as Manatee County, we can provide a better positive vision for all of our futures. I always remember something my father always said: remember that no man is an island, and it takes all of us working together. And let's provide and do a better job, and let's make the right decisions. And as we go forward and look at all of the impacts that the flyover through the urban core and First Street will have on our community. Thank you.
Now please welcome David Hutchison.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm going to start off talking a little bit about what the MPO is, Metropolitan Planning Organization, and why MPOs exist all around the United States. Our Sarasota Manatee MPO is the regional transportation planning entity for Sarasota and Manatee counties. They're established by state and federal laws and through interlocal agreement to provide a process for local governments within the region to coordinate with the Florida Department of Transportation, the Federal Highway Administration, and the Federal Transit Administration, and amongst themselves. And the process is required to be continuing, comprehensive, and cooperative. And our MPO is governed by a 17-member apportioned board comprised of elected officials representing both counties, 9 cities, and a representative of the Sarasota Manatee Airport Authority. The Florida DOT District 1 Secretary serves as a non-voting advisor, and I see Commissioner Banak, who serves on the MPO board here, and I know that other elected officials here today have served on the MPO. I think Councilman Byrd has served on the MPO. And the officials from our communities that are on the MPO board are also Commissioner Baugh and Commissioner Johnson from the county, and Councilman Patrick Roth and Vice Mayor Gene Brown from the city of Bradenton, and Mayor Shirley Groover Bryant from the city of Palmetto. The MPO doesn't work in a vacuum. We have a technical advisory committee of planners and engineers representing the various jurisdictions in the MPO, and also a citizen advisory committee. And Misty Servia is currently a representative to our citizens advisory committee. So we thank her for her volunteer work for the MPO as well. MPOs got their start in the United States in the 50s and 60s with the development of the interstate highway system, when people would wake up one morning to the bulldozers out back and wonder what is going on, and they would call their local elected officials, who would call the congressman, who had said, "Oh yeah, didn't we tell you we're building the interstate?" And they would say, "Well, no, we didn't. You didn't tell us, or you didn't tell us enough. You didn't ask us where it should go." So as part of the Federal Aid Highway Act of 1962, and ever since then, with federal funding comes the provision for a metropolitan planning organization process, or a process which might be an MPO, that each urbanized area in the country with a population of over 50,000 will have this process done through the state. And the whole idea is for local jurisdictions to have a say and a mechanism, a process for influencing and in being part of the allocation of limited transportation dollars, much of which goes for maintenance and operations, but also a lot of it goes for addressing new infrastructure needs. So that's sort of what MPOs are all about, is to make sure that some of the questions that Councilman Byrd said need to be raised do get raised, and will get answered in the course of the process. Now, so we work with a hierarchy of plans. We work to assure consistency with local economic development and comprehensive plans, transportation plans, tourism development plans, and this process is cooperative and continuing. Sometimes it's complicated and there are conflicts, but it takes time, unfortunately. And there's not enough money to build everything that people would like to see built in the way of transportation investments, and that's part of what we have to address. The idea of addressing the lack of capacity between Bradenton and Palmetto has been a priority of the MPO for quite a few years. Back in 2013, the Federal Highway Administration and FDOT assisted the MPO in conducting meetings that were held at the Manatee Convention Center in Palmetto involving a potential new bridge study and corridor improvements in Palmetto, and they said rather than fund separate studies and a PD&E for a new bridge or a project that you have not defined, you should prepare an analysis that's more regional in nature. And so the Central Manatee Network Alternatives analysis grew out of that involvement and engagement, and it's sort of a new commitment from FDOT to work in partnership with the county and the two cities involved to identify the problems and some potential solutions, some of which might be implementable sooner rather than later, and some of which might take quite a few years, because the concept to concrete for a new infrastructure project can often take 10 or 12 years, and that's if you have all the funds available. So out of the Central Manatee Network Alternatives analysis are some long-term alternatives related to potential new bridge alignments or possibility of, in conjunction with the replacement of the DeSoto Bridge, could capacity improvements be incorporated into that, and that's where the idea of the elevated throughway or flyover came about. And it's early in the overall process of the bridge replacement, which they hope to accomplish within the next 10 to 12 years. So it's one of several alternatives that will receive a lot of further study and analysis, many of which will answer some of the questions, and some of those questions might not be answered at this Central Manatee Network Alternatives analysis stage of it, which is a planning study versus a detailed environmental study and engineering analysis. One of the things that our process does do is provide lots of public involvement opportunities and lots of opportunities for our local jurisdictions to work in partnership with the FDOT to determine what potential alternatives should be included and are worth further study in the future. So partnership is kind of a big thing, and regardless of what we end up doing, it will involve partnerships and working together. The issues that the Central Manatee Network Alternatives analysis was designed to address wasn't just all about congestion, although that's certainly a big part of it, but also about safety and mobility and preserving the livability of our communities and making sure that existing residents are also well served by improvements that might get built. The near-term Phase 1 operational improvements that have been identified and approved for further analysis by the city of Bradenton are what I think are the most exciting proposals to come out of the Central Manatee Network Alternatives analysis, and I think they stand the potential for reducing our seasonal gridlock by up to 30% evening and morning peak, so major improvements in reducing congestion in downtown Bradenton while improving safety and also not reducing the traffic that is available for local businesses. It's only one thing worse than too much traffic for business, and that's no traffic. And we've seen that not too long ago, and we don't want to reduce congestion by having a big economic downturn. So I had left out on the literature table a description of the operational improvements which involve rerouting of the traffic flows at 4 major downtown intersections, and you might want to take a look at that and sort of get a preview of what your future traffic patterns might look like. And at this point in time, they have not suggested eliminating one-way pairs, but they have agreed to, at the request of the First Street Working Group that requested they look at elements of the Folly Plan, which involves moving some of the east-west traffic down to Martin Luther King Boulevard, 9th, and also potential changes at the east end of downtown, as well as at the west end of downtown. So FDOT has agreed to vet some of those proposals and see if some of them could be incorporated into the near-term improvements, which could be implementable within the next 2 years. And again, with a 30% reduction in daily congestion, that is great news, because the one thing that the MPO process doesn't want to do is produce studies that sit on the shelf. I mean, this whole Central Manatee Network Alternatives Analysis was designed to help speed up construction of projects that have support that can help our traffic flows on a daily basis. The replacement of the DeSoto Bridge is projected within the next 10 to 12 years. It needs to be replaced for structural reasons, so that's going to happen no matter what, and whether or not it would include any capacity improvements that may or may not involve some sort of an elevation or grade separation would be addressed in the PD&E process, which is currently funded 5 years from now. So I think there was one other thing that I would like to make is we're going to have change. I mean, we have a population in our region of right around 800,000 now, and that's projected to go up to nearly 1 million over the next 25 years, 20 years or so. So we're going to see change. Technology changes, cars change. They may or may not be there may be other factors that we need to take into consideration as these studies move forward, and hopefully you'll all be part of it. Thank you.
Now for the portion of our program where you get to get involved, and that is our question and answer session. Remember, you must be a member or of Manatee Tiger Bay to ask a question. Please state your name when you go to the microphone and tell us whether you're a member. You are limited to only one question per person and are allotted 30 seconds for your question. And please do not make statements, but ask questions. So the microphone is yours.
I'm Mark Barnaby, and I am a member. I have 3 questions, but I do want to note that we're now in a position where we're affecting the health and safety of residents on both sides of the river, and that is a concern to me. So having said that, one, because I've heard people raise this question, and obviously would address a lot of the comments that Councilman Byrd raised, has thought given to a tunnel situation. I'm sure there's cost issues there. That's a question for David. Second question is for both of you. Is no answer a solution? Which I think the answer is no, but I'm curious what you say. And 3, given what we're talking about in the long-range population that is expected in this area, should we not be looking at 2 or more options, including perhaps both the flyover and a second bridge or a third bridge across the river?
David, you want to start?
Am I supposed to remember 3 questions? Well, first of all, any opportunities we have to enhance our grid system and strengthen it are probably worth considering, such as more bridges. I mean, if it was up to me, I'd say let's take all the bridges we can get. They're very expensive. Tunnels are not really considered cost feasible in the state of Florida. The city of Sarasota recently tried to build a tunnel just for a sewage pipeline near one of their plants in downtown under one section of Hudson Bayou, and it has become, I mean, they're working on it now, but it didn't work the way they thought it was, and it cost them at least 4 times more than the several million that they thought it was going to cost initially. So tunnels aren't looked at as a viable option. And yes, we should be considering multiple options as we continue to grow. I mean, this area is desirable. People want to come here, and they are going to continue to come here, and we're providing for that in the land development plan. So whether we like it or not, we're going to have more people here, and they are going to want to get around, and for the next 10 or 15 years at least, we're all going to be wanting to do so in our vehicles.
Okay, I think I got the three questions together here. First of all, let's say no option. We have to do something. Every place you go, people talk about traffic. And that's why what I wanted to bring about in the speaking earlier, from my point of view, was that, yeah, we're growing. We're growing a lot. And what happens is that we have to look at some of these parallel routes. We have to look at alternatives and ways that we can move traffic through our area. The big issue, I think, for me, is looking at the possibility of our east-west thoroughfares, and a lot of that is solved on looking at the short-term goals or the short-term aspects of the study that came before the city of Bradenton. And even at that point, and that's why I always say we have to come together and come up with some of these solutions, because one of the things we presented as a group that was working with the Flyover, and Commissioner Smith was a part of that group, and some other business leaders and community leaders came up with what was called the Bradenton Palmetto Urban Traffic Flow Guidance and Distribution Plan. A lot of you probably saw one of the articles in the paper. It talked about the possibility of two-way streets as far as Manatee Avenue, going through downtown, two-way 6th Avenue, looking at expanding some of these east-west thoroughfares down some, looking at the possibility of all of the different bridge options that are on the table. I will agree with one thing, as far as tunnels, because of the, I'm not an engineer or anything, but because of the elevations within the state of Florida, tunnels are probably not going to be something that's cost effective. But one thing I just want to implore, and I may not be, we're talking way down the road, I may not be in here or at least in an elected capacity then before anything is done, but we have to make sure that we come together and make the right decisions for the future of Bradenton. Are we at the point where we need to do flyovers? Are we at the point where we need to possibly look at some of these other alternatives, whether they be short-term, moderate, middle of the road? So, and I hope I answered all of those different questions, but definitely we can't just sit by and do absolutely nothing and expect it to just go away, because people are here, they're not going anywhere. We just have to come up with a better way of moving traffic through our area. Thank you.
Hi there, Betsy Benak, and I am a member. I really appreciate Councilman Byrd's comments because of the discussion that we've been having for so long about this, and certainly it's a huge issue for this community. But we haven't really talked about a very, very big concern, which is that this corridor is a death corridor. It is where people are being killed because they're pedestrians trying to get through that maze. And I wonder if we're throwing the idea out when you think about the highway that came in divided the community. It divided the community north of the river and caused so many problems when that at-grade highway came in. I've heard about it numerous times about how it divided the community. And so to assume automatically that an elevated roadway will be worse than what we have now, I want your response to that, because we've got people dying pedestrians dying on the corridor now. It already divided the community. I get it. I read Jane Jacobs' The Death of a City. I get it. I get what it used to be like. But I don't think we're giving enough. This is a different time. We can make an incredible pedestrian environment if we do it right. But there's a ton of questions that have to be answered. So I think I've only had one question. Maybe I talked too much about everything else, but I would like a response, please.
Thank you for that question. And one of the things we talked about, the study itself, we're talking about safety of pedestrian traffic, safety of the bicycle traffic, and that's why my focus is on saying we need to come together and say what's best for our area. I was in a discussion with the pastor from St. Mary Missionary Baptist Church a couple of years ago, and they talked about the possibility of even looking at pedestrian overpasses to go across because the street was so busy. So there's an awareness of providing safety, for our pedestrians as well as the bicycle traffic. Now, as far as the issue of flyover, I think that overall, one of the things we have to, whenever we make any of these decisions, we have to try to look at what's going on in other areas as well as the history that's behind it. You have communities that are not only just saying no to flyovers, but they're tearing them down. They're taking them out, saying that it was something that was, it killed the character of their city. They're looking at those things. So all I'm saying is, and I had sort of I guess people call me Mr. Anti-Flyover, but I'm not anti-flyover. I'm pro, let's make Bradenton a place that people will like to come to and live and be able to travel throughout the city without all of the traffic congestion getting worse than what it is today. So my opinion is that I definitely think we need to look at all alternatives, and that's why I'm saying, let's come together and look at the positive aspects of all of the different alternatives, and guess what? If it comes back to that, then so be it. As a community, we have to say, hey, we made the right decision, and that's the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Misty Servia, and I am a Tiger Bay member. And my question is for Mr. Hutchinson. And so sometimes it's important to understand how new roads like this will work if we look at how they've worked in other areas. Can you talk about the Leroy Selman flyover and tell us how that's been functioning, and if this one would be similar to that or different?
It's probably much too early to know if anything that would get designed, which is 3 steps away in the process, would be similar here. But my understanding is that the bicycle and pedestrian activity that can occur under the current extension of the Leroy Selman has been received very positively. And I know there are a few places where grade separation has worked and not eliminated business, or it eliminates the need to take right away. So I think that's why the consultant team for the CMNAA came up with the concept here was, what can we do to leverage the replacement of the bridge? That's going to be the soonest big construction activity that has a possibility to address capacity issues. Now, I don't know that they've actually said this is the solution. I think they're more like, this is one of the things that should be studied. And exactly what that might look like, it's very early to try to determine what it would be like. I think that, again, it's early enough that when that study does take place, there will be lots of discussion with the communities involved, with the jurisdictions involved, so that whatever ends up getting designed and built will be done in such a way that it is a win-win.
My name is Fred Sperry, and I'm a member with Belmar Condominiums. And we attended a session that they had for Riviera Dunes, and it was explained to us that the study area was a 13 square mile area that right here is in the heart of Bradenton and Palmetto. And I guess we're thinking that throughout the United States, interstate highway systems really help divert a lot of the through traffic away from population areas. And with I-75 only being 3.5 miles, further east, why shouldn't that be studied as a viable alternative? Now, right now, it's as congested as the 301 is, but it would just seem like that should be considered, and we were told that it wasn't because it's outside of the study area. So I'd like to ask, could that be considered, and could this decision be delayed while it is considered?
Well, again, first of all, any decision is quite a ways out into the future, seeing as how the PD&E study isn't even funded for another 5 years. So I don't think talking about delaying a decision is a good one. The bridge is going to be replaced, and that's what the PD&E will relate to. The I-75 corridor is the subject of a separate study that will be getting underway in the next year, and they are looking at long-term capacity needs. In our district, the Florida DOT has preserved an envelope for future potential mass transit or public transportation within the median of I-75. The introduction of express lanes or toll lanes is likely to get addressed in that update, in that study. So it can only be widened so far. They're talking about 10 lanes as an ultimate, which is 5 lanes. And right now we have 3, and then we have some turn lanes that take traffic on and off. So there's not a whole lot of expansion left for I-75. If the capacity, because what they look at is future demand, not capacity. So if the capacity is not there to address the demand, then your delays extend to more during the day, so you have a longer rush hour, or people divert and find another way to go, or they don't come. So there's a lot of things that if you don't build it, then some people won't come, but some people will, and they'll just take longer to get wherever they're going. So I wouldn't recommend a delay. We want to speed things up, and that's why they looked at this whole concept in the first place, was could something be done in conjunction with the replacement of the bridge?
Charles Smith, I am a member, Vice President of Manatee Tiger Bay. My question is, have we done an impact study on the property value in the area when you talk about a flyover or a bridge in general? All 4 of 3 proposals are in District 2, which I represent. I was to a meeting, and my concern to my constituents in Riviera Dunes is property value. Has FDOT MPO did a study on what the property value would be if this flyover does come through First Street? And have you studied the federal and state statutes dealing with homelessness, as St. Petersburg faced when they did the flyover, that you could not move homeless from under the bridge? So have those issues been taking place and educated the public on those issues? Thank you very much, and this question is to both.
So I'll start out in answering that. To my knowledge, and when they've come before the city of Bradenton, those studies as far as the values, I have not seen them. Whether they were done or not, I guess we'll have to address that with FDOT. Now, as far as the issues, and that's why one of the things I wanted to bring out was that we talk about the negative impacts. Those are some of the things that when you come through an area, and I may mention of all of the different areas that we're talking about First Street, we're talking about coming along all the way over towards Riviera Dunes. We're talking the Civic Center. We're talking, and how high is this going to be? 40, 50 feet in the air? We don't know the elevation at this point. Therefore, when we look at issues such as the population being able to live, what's the design? Do we wait to get into the design phase to look at a lot of those things where there'll be, an opportunity to where we're trying to redevelop these areas to add blight to the area? So we have to look at all those different things, as well as, we talk about business killers and everything. I won't go deeply in depth with it, but, what about the construction phases? Way back the last major improvement there, my family owned a business along First Street. And Charles, I don't know if you remember back during that time, they came through with, during the time they did, came by Red Barn Flea Market, and pretty much, my dad, he's no longer with us, but we never did rebound from that construction phase. So you're going to affect some businesses. So to think that there's not going to be an impact, all I'm saying is let's look at the total impact of a project of this magnitude and what it's going to do to the character of the city as well as other aspects.
Thank you, Commissioner. The initial questions, as far as I know, those are the types of detailed analysis that would not take place until the PD&E process or other analysis not as part of this planning phase study. If they would look at something like that, it would be at a very high level. So, again, they've looked at where it would right away be needed, and they are working on some very preliminary analyses of what those costs might be for some of the various alternatives, so that there's a final report that will feed the PD&E process and expedite it.
Good afternoon. My name is Ben Bacher. I would like to point my question towards Mr. Hutchison. I'd like to drill down a little bit deeper into the very last statement you made. With the rapid and compounding progress of technology in our day and age, and at the infant stages of automated and driverless cars that we are now dealing with Tesla and other kinds of manufacturers, what is your opinion, taking that into account with this planning process, along the lines of how do you think it will impact traffic everywhere, and most importantly in our area, and is it an actual reality that in the time it takes to plan and approve and build a project of this magnitude, by the time we cut the ribbon on it, will it be irrelevant due to automated vehicles, or will it be irrelevant because whether people are or are not driving their cars, we still have the same amount of cars on the road? I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
Sure, and to answer your last question first, it won't be irrelevant. We need to enhance our grid ways that we can. So if we do build it, whatever gets built is likely going to be needed when it's built, if it gets built in 10 to 12 years, whatever it is. But on the other hand, it is real that automated and connected vehicles are here. They're going to be. We may see them come into common use much quicker than we thought. That could happen over the next 5 to 15 years. It's on major thoroughfares and on campuses that have controlled environments where they're likely to be tested or are already being tested, and we'll see safety improvements. Cars are getting safer even without being connected and autonomous. So I do think it'll be positive, but it's going to be a big change, and it might help reduce the need for additional capacity. It's not likely to reduce the need for us to replace the DeSoto Bridge or to have some additional capacity between Bradenton and Palmetto.
Yes, I'm Judy Wellman. I'm a Tiger Bay member. In the summertime, I live near Syracuse, New York, which had Interstate 81 built through it as part of the interstate system, and someone else alluded to this. It created an urban desert. It's block after block of empty lots because no one can live under there. It destroyed historically black neighborhoods, which is a typical thing that these flyovers do. They're replacing it, and considering probably the top-rated alternative right now is a street-level boulevard-type movement through the city. And as part of their dialogue, they have been looking at cities across the country who are now looking at replacing interstate systems, and I know a lot of them are doing the same thing. They're taking down those flyovers and putting them at the street level, and I wonder, if that's been something that you've looked at is the context of what other cities are doing as they face this, and the impact of the flyovers in cities that already have them, which in my case is destroyed the downtown area. And then I'm sitting over there looking out the window at that railroad bridge. It may be thinking inside the box, just tying it to the replacement of the DeSoto Bridge rather than saying, what do we really need? Anybody thought about just getting on a train and taking your car over that way? Whatever. Thank you.
That's precisely why my point of view right now is we need to look at all of the different parallel corridors. One of the things way back, and sometimes in government, you see the missed opportunities. Talking about railroad crossings, there was another one. I don't know how long many of you were here, but it was a second crossing going across Manatee River, and that right-of-way was right there. If we had looked to that right-of-way years ago, to put a bridge across there, we would probably not be looking at the congestion on the bridges going across that we have right now. So we have to look at all those different things. And as we look at the different, going into the PD&E and all those different phases, that's why I thought that right now, let's try to put our heads together as a community and try to figure out the direction that we want to go. We don't want to be in a position where we put all of this money, and that's why I said effective and efficient use of public funds, put all this money into something that we're going to turn around and say, hey, that was a bad idea. We need to tear it down. You got cities across this country that are doing that. And I brought the other point was Bonita Springs. They pretty much got to the point where, they looked at spending more money and they say, well, you know what? This is not going to be good for our area. We're going to look at some other alternatives and other options. And all I'm saying at this point is let's try to come together as a community and, try to do something that's going to be, we don't want to have, we have beautiful beaches, we have Lakewood Ranch, we have beautiful areas in this area. We don't want to have what she described as an urban desert, that's coming right straight down First Street. And we have to say that is a possibility if it's not done right and we don't come together as a community. And one last thing, and I don't know if he knows the numbers, but I think at this point the study is about, $3 million at this point? So, let's look at, trying to, get some groups together of business, community, and government leaders, and let's do it right. Thank you.
I think those are good questions and ones that we want to ensure that whatever we get for our communities is going to be a plus, not a minus. I also agree with Commissioner Benak is that it is possible to build new things without destroying a community. I think you can have it both ways to some extent. At the same time, we should learn from history, no question about it.
Good afternoon. My name is Jim Whitman. I'm a Tiger Bay member. And I guess my question is primarily directed to Mr. Byrd in response to your comments, because the bottom line is we need to discuss all the alternatives. And when I came here, I had a different concept of what the flyover was. So I'm going to, it seems to me that we can stipulate we can't lose capacity going across the river. In fact, we may need to add capacity. My assumption was that we were going to try to reroute through traffic away from downtown to the east, where it can connect with the 4-lane 301, and then go down to Washington Boulevard, Sarasota, and point south. That would require a bridge connecting maybe with the interstate. I'm just saying, we can't lose capacity and we can't destroy downtown. If right now, the problem is there's too much traffic on these bridges, and part of that is through traffic, going south and not stopping anywhere here and not going east or west. So if we can get that out of downtown, where they're not going to stop anyway. That was a thought. That was my brain connecting with you.
Thank you. And we go back to what I initially said, and I'm in agreement, is that we have to look at some of these other alternatives and ways that we can divert. If a third of this traffic is not coming to downtown, why can't we look at some of the alternatives and sort of give thumbs up to some of those other alternatives, figure out what those negative impacts are on those alternatives, and let's try to eliminate those negative impacts. We got different alternatives that are out there, and I've had conversations with FDOT as well as others in saying, okay, if this is one of the negative impacts of this particular alternative, how can we alleviate that? We also look at technology. Technology is changing every day, to the point where we have to look at, are there other ways of handling the congestion problems going across the river? So I'm in favor, and one of the things I did note when we had was scheduled here was that it was the flyover, and I wish we could have taken a little more time, and maybe later on we can talk about all the other alternatives. But I just, in a persuasive argument, I would love for us to let's just take a moment and get it right. We're talking long-term goals and plans. Let's get with the MPO. Let's get with our cities. Let's get with our county commission and business leaders, community leaders, and come up with the right decisions that would be best for Bradenton. So I also look at some of those other corridors, and if they're not coming, why have the traffic coming into the downtown Bradenton or the downtown Palmetto areas and creating that congestion if they're not having a destination coming here? And that's one of the things that the models did show, that 1/3 of that traffic's not even have a destination of either one of these cities. Thank you.
I believe we're out of time unless Julie has a question. Let's award the Tiger by the Tail for the best question of the day.
Hello, I'm Julie Jakeway. I'm a member of the Tiger Bay Board and from the State College of Florida. I'd like to award the Tiger by the Tail for the best question to Mark Barnaby, who got us started off for quality as well as quantity. Thank you.
Oh, sure.
FDOT is not done with the Central Manatee Network Alternatives Analysis, but it's not going to continue forever. So I would encourage you to go to their website, which is www.swflroads.com, and if you go to future projects, you'll see the link to the Central Manatee Network Alternatives Analysis, and they are still taking comments there, and it tells you who to contact. They have a lot of the study documents that have been assembled and are available, and I would encourage you to take a look and respond, get your comments in. Thank you.
Our thanks to the speakers, David Hutchison and Harold Bird. Thank you very much. I would like to remind everybody that Pier 22 does provide complimentary valet parking for our luncheons, and especially when the parking lot is almost full when you drive up, you might want to take advantage of that. Our next luncheon is Thursday, April 19th, and the topic will be on school safety, very timely now. For membership information, go to our website at manateetigerbay.org. And thanks to our board of directors and program committee. Please stand. Members and guests, if you know someone who might be interested in an upcoming topic, please invite them as your guests. And our thanks to Charles Clapsaddle and the METV crew for taping and broadcasting our forum. Remember, you can watch today's forum on METV channels and YouTube. To go online at metvweb.com. And that's all, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming.
Bye.